The West itself is rejecting the authority of Christ and enjoying the feminist and Marxist takeover of their culture, and at the same time, by accepting these secular and atheist values, they lose their defense against Islam.
Feminism and LGBT+ equality are not atheist nor secular values. That right there confirms that the pretense that you are an atheist is just that, a dishonest front designed to get your foot through the door so you can preach whatever the fuck you think your religion dictates. Fact: there are no atheist values. There are values held by atheists. Hell, there are even common values held by many atheists. That is true. But not as some sort of intrinsic part of being an atheist, sometimes known as atheism. Unlike some who completely reject the word atheism, I'm actually pretty fine with it. It has a use in conveying information, namely that these people don't believe in a god. So I'm not going to go overboard and gouge you on that. But the rest of what you just stated here was utter toss and nothing more. Moving on to secularism, and once again you missed the mark entirely. Yes, secularism is a value and can be modelled as a worldview. No, this does not intrinsically include either feminism or LGBT+ equality. I think the shitposter community in the general segment of YouTube sort of clarified that for us these past few years. Now, I personally hold to the intersection of secularism, feminism, LGBT+ equality, ethnic rights, class rights, and rights for people of both physical and mental disability, to name a few. Not because secularism necessitates it, but because I feel that religious equality, without the equalities focused upon by the groups just listed, isn't good enough. But that's just me. Oh, and in case you're wondering, secularism is religious equality since to have freedom of religion, one must indeed have freedom from it. If the government can enforce whatever religion it deems right onto its subjects, that is a gross violation of human rights. This is why child branding should be outlawed, period. I don't care if you want to give a child a religious tattoo or worse, chop bits off and sew bits closed. You have no right to make such a medically unnecessary decision for a child. Now, I want to know how bettering and strengthening secularism, i.e. the forcing of religious theocracy out of the public sphere, has left us open to Islam. The methods of tackling Islam are pretty much identical to tackling Christianity. Why? Well, because Islam and Christianity have the same root. They've just diverged slightly with the Quran, which is in no way worse than what is found in either the Christian New Testament or the Jewish Tanakh. Islam is crumbling from within, thanks to active secularism on a global scale. To quote Maryam Namazi again, the internet is doing to Islam what the printing press did in the past to Christianity. End quote. And this is something I've seen myself, with the number of apostates that approach me increasing, along with the amount of criticism of Islam. Note, when I say criticism of Islam, I actually mean criticism of the religion and its practices, not thinly veiled attempts to incite a race war. And with that said, welcome back to part 2 of my response to White House video titled Alt-Right # Atheism. This is the one where White Owl goes from being genuinely ignorant to reaching an ideological state so dense that it makes Mjolnir look like it was made from aerographite by comparison. So let's grill this bird.
And it is quite embarrassing to have the West's greatest values be the LGBTQ movement, abortions and weed legalization, while the Islamic culture, with all its low IQ and middle-aged barbarism, support the family and protect their children from this cultural decadence.
The Catholic University of America has welcomed a growing number of Muslim students in recent years. It is not just Catholics who feel at home there.
Being in a religious environment where religion is practiced, it makes it more understandable and easier to practice the religion itself.
Reef al-Shabnan is a Muslim from Saudi Arabia. She likes Catholic University because of its conservative values.
Family values, I guess the nuclear family, pro-life, the position of the school on those issues go along with my position as well.
Way to punch yourself in the face using that news segment just now. First you try to reduce Western values to a select few that you personally disagree with, then you go on to reference a news story about how a major establishment in the West is popular with Muslims because it rejects the values listed. Here's a fun fact: the West has a diverse array of values, some of which are shared near universally, others meanwhile are not. There are massive groups, including the Catholic Church and its 1.2 billion adherents, which hold to your asinine viewpoints on things such as equality and bodily autonomy. So let's be honest, you're not actually angry at the fact that said values don't exist in the West. You're just pissy because those values are being challenged over their right to dictate the lives of others for no justifiable reason besides my magic sky daddy says we mustn't. You're angry at the continuing removal of the Christian theocracy, the Christian equivalent of what you're trying to fearmonger here with Islam. All of which I think says a lot about you. I mean, for one, if you really think equality and bodily autonomy are a bad thing, how about you fuck off to the Middle East? You talk about how Muslims have all these wonderful values you wish we still had in the West. So why don't you fuck off to Syria? Of course, because you're talking total shit, because it's not your special version of the magic sky daddy, those reasons, and the fact that you just hate brown people. Now, I love LGBT+ equality and bodily autonomy, and whilst I don't care about weed legislation, I do care about ending this asinine war on drugs that has done nothing to resolve the real issues of social instability through lack of social security and community support. You don't. That doesn't surprise me. You started your video by pretending a racist bigot who got everything wrong was prophetic. I expected this sort of shit sooner or later. Fact is, your beliefs don't have the right to violate my bodily autonomy. And that's whether it be who I sleep with, my gender, or what sort of contraception I or anyone else use. If you don't like gay marriage, don't get one. If you don't like trans people, don't jump through years of bureaucratic hoops to finally get signed off on confirmation surgery. If you don't like abortions, get a vasectomy and you'll never have to risk that with a future partner. Not to mention the future projection for Western society improves drastically when we remove your willfully ignorant ass from the gene pool. But in all seriousness, a value I wish was universal in the West is bodily autonomy. You are no different from the extreme adherents of Islam in that regard.
We send our children to a Miley Cyrus concert.
Who the fuck sends their child to a Miley Cyrus concert? Are you perchance confusing her Hannah Montana years with Disney to her current work? Because here's a little fact that you seem to have missed. Miley grew up, and so did her work. Nobody is under the impression that her contemporary work is meant for children. That is seemingly with the exception of reactionary asshats looking to cry about the degradation of modern society. I'm sorry. Would you rather Miley stopped playing with the giant penis on stage and started reading everyone Ezekiel chapter 23 verse 20, which reads, quote, "There she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys and whose emission was like that of horses," end quote. I'm not a fan, by the way. I remember seeing Wrecking Ball when it first came out, before the tsunami of parodies. But if the worst you can point to is an entertainer doing something shocking on stage at a concert for adults, you're making a weak case overall. No surprise there.
While the Islamic children are conservatively dressed and raising their brothers and sisters and practicing for motherhood themselves for when they turn 20 years old, when our 20-year-old daughters are traveling the world, enjoying sexual experiences with Juan and Tyrone, having useless university degrees and drinking themselves to death because of their miserable existence.
Oh, it seems we have an inseller here as well. Look, if women aren't having sex with you, that doesn't mean there has to be some sort of cultural Marxist conspiracy against you. I mean, sure, that is one possibility. On the other hand, it could just be that you're such a putrid example of humanity that not a single one of them desires to be in your presence for an extended period of time. And considering the evidence shown thus far, I'm going to have to go with the much higher probability of the latter case in this one. Also, just cut out the crap with the Freudian armchair theorizing. Women travelling the world and having sex with people who they actually like, and not yourself, are not drinking themselves into oblivion due to an empty hollowness. This is just a rehash of the atheist or nihilistic apologetics crap we've been hearing forever. You know jack shit. That's all you've actually demonstrated so far. I mean, you perceive women as a national resource owed to you, rather than fully autonomous human beings with their own dreams and desires. What you seem to be pushing as a value the West should hold is nothing less than the slavery of women. Like, fuck you.
Studying the Islamic culture, we can obviously see that they do some things better than we do them right now. The same goes for Christianity. One added layer of difficulty is that Trump is reducing the bureaucratic state, which in a sense is a good thing. But back in the early days of America, you had a small government with no handouts and no safety nets. But you had a big Christian culture and communities, and if you became homeless or something else, the church would be there as a cultural safety net. The church would help you get back on your feet, and the church had a limited amount of money from donations and therefore had a big incentive to help people as efficiently as possible.
So I need you to back up all the crap you have just asserted without any and all basis, because frankly, it stinks. We have ample evidence to show that Christianity has no desire to actually assist people. Rather, it seeks to drain them of vast resources, whilst giving only a fraction back. The take a tenner, give a pound approach to charity, pretending like this is somehow virtuous. A great example of this is the Catholic Church's con, where it pretends to be a charity and gains donations from well-meaning people of all religions, only to funnel all of that money back to the Vatican. As for the idea that government handouts, what's actually social security for taxpayers funded by taxpayers, are a bad thing, the UK spends less on Medicare per capita than the US, in spite of having universal coverage through the NHS. That's also in spite of the Conservative Party's continued theft and sale of taxpayer-funded services. So even when crippled by right-wingers such as yourself, the UK still does better than the US. As for cutting regulations in relation to the article you showed on screen, the headline in the article in general is fake. Trump has not cut an unprecedented number of regulations. He has undoubtedly killed a few, but he has also taken credit for ones already dead, shelved some others, and tweaked the numbers in a few other ways so that he can go, "Oh my god, it's like the biggest, believe me, the biggest part of deregulations ever." It's all about dick waving and has no basis in reality. However, there are some rather serious ones that he has cut. For example, bills on net neutrality, workplace safety, the transfer of military equipment to the police, and of course, fossil fuels are amongst those cut. Now, you've not shown any of this is a good thing. All you've done is assert your usual, unnuanced style of garbage and assume that you are correct. And to that I say this long overdue phrase, citation needed. Currently, I'm doing all the work to supply evidence to counter your purely ideologically driven verbal diarrhea.
Now that Trump is reducing the government safety net and Christianity and Christian communities have ceased to exist in the Western world,
I'm sorry, but where in the Western world has Christianity or even the vaguely termed Christian communities ceased to exist? You do know that it's still the majority in the United States of America and major parts of Europe. Like fucking hell, This is just drilling to be more and more absurd by the minute. I honestly don't know if I can make it to the end of the video.
We ask ourselves, will this lead to a collapse of our society once more? If we were to get rid of the religious tolerance and we would become a state with no religion, but have a state that is based on science and natural law, then we need to find a solution for the cultural problems that will arise to an even greater levels than they do now.
There is so much word salad here that it's frankly alarming. What the hell do you mean by natural law? I have to ask, since natural law is a religious perspective which holds to the universal moral dictates sourced from some transcendent entity, most often a deity. So the idea of this coming from science, which is amoral by very definition, is a fucking atrocious display of scientific illiteracy. Like, it seems that you've heard about the laws of nature, which are descriptions of what we observe and have nothing to do with prescribing human behaviour, and you've conflated that with the idea of natural law, which is most often utilised to defend outdated moral perspectives. For example, the idea that it's a woman's place to remain at home, that gay people are a disease upon humanity, and that some ethnic groups are inherently superior to others because of phrenology, or some shit like that. The moment you target that loose thread, however, the entire shtick falls apart. It's just bigotry dressed up and rebranded, like race realism or gender critical. Beyond that, again, citation needed. You've asserted that things will get worse as religion decreases, supply the fucking evidence, and explain Scandinavia.
The reason why we're in this mess today is because our empire was built on a crooked foundation. The solutions to our problems will be the solutions we've never had before, so we can get the results we've never had before. I think if we wanted to live in a post-religious West, that we have to do a proper analysis of religion and what benefits the religions have given us, and if we can justify these characteristics with natural and scientific law. I will make a video about the scientific analysis in the future, but in the meantime I would like to hear your thoughts on religion. Do we still need religion to save the West, or will atheism pull us through this conflict?
Well, if I haven't made it perfectly clear already, I think your pretense of conflict in terms of this ongoing war between Islam and the West is as real as the problem of sin and the war between the elves and the gnomes. Sure, there are a lot of fucking problems with Islam, especially with groups such as IERA and EF Dawa, but you know what? Christianity and European fascists, such as yourself, are far more of a threat to my day-to-day existence than Islam ever was. And here's the secret. I don't have to pick one or the other. I, as with many others, can and do tackle both groups. The two Islamic groups I mentioned before are groups I've personally seen to, even getting them to remove some of their videos because I drew to light some of the toxic elements to what they're trying to serve people. But Islam as a whole won't be defanged by people like me. It'll be defanged by the apostates, which are coming to the surface more and more each year. And if anything I do here supports them in that, whether it's in offering a network of like-minded people online, shining a light on Islam's bad practices so Islamists are hesitant to act, or supplying apostates with necessary information to tackle religious arguments, or even supporting apostates in escaping nations which still incarcerate or even execute so-called blasphemers, then I'll do so gladly. It's not the secular community in general that's ill-equipped to tackle Islam. That's alt-right fascism. All people like you do is enact a cultural defense in Islamist extremists, forming an us versus them mentality, ostracizing people of both Middle Eastern and specifically Muslim origin, and turning them into a fertile crop for Islamic theocracy. You and the far-right Islamist you are trying to portray all Muslims as are the same. You just praise your God by different languages as you enact violence towards innocent people. And all you do is feed their numbers. So yeah, your video is utter trash both factually and ideologically. But what's up with these racists on YouTube using bird names, by the way? Though credit to Black Pigeon, at least he subconsciously admits that his work is trash in his choice of bird. As for you, there's nothing subtle about your willful ignorance and raging bigotry. You're just an asshat with a YouTube channel, seemingly trying to blame everyone besides themselves for how pitiful they've allowed their existence to become. It's time for you to grow up and take some damn responsibility. Hi there, I'd just like to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, John Schoenrock, Alexander Williams, Ernst Puna, and Daniel Martinez. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years, and really is the only thing that manages to keep the channel afloat. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe and follow Essence of Thought on Facebook and Twitter. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, an organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity or ability both mental and physical will be removed immediately, and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's keep this space one which upholds the humanist values. Thank you.